Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I share Mr. Arrington's frustration. I will say that we voted for the Accountability Act here in order to give more flexibility for hiring and firing. And I did that in good faith. And what I saw was that the people who have been fired are cooks and gardeners. And those people didn't cost anything close to millions of dollars. And I think that I feel a little bit taken advantage of because that was not the intent of the vote that I took. It was the intent was to get to things like this. And I would just say too, you know, when you were testifying about the mismatch between what doctors say and what IT people say, that's not the first time we've heard this. And I was trying to remember what it was. It was the medical surgical prime vendor program too. And I'd maybe direct this to Mr. Dahl. What is the appropriate response for the department to take so that when we do these are novel contracts, but you know you can lose $5 million before you lose $500 million. What should they be doing up front to make sure that these people are speaking the same language, and if they're not, that we catch it early and we don't spend so much money, waste so much money down the line that we're having a hearing like this?
In this case, the approach was they awarded that initial task order where they were going to deploy this in a VISN. It was a $7.5 million task order. So in theory,
right,
that would seem like a reasonable approach. But that was due, they awarded that task order in 2012. It was due to be completed in 2013, late 2013. They didn't get to operational testing on that until March of 2015. So they had already slipped about 15 months. That's when they identified some deficiencies. But in the meantime, they had been awarding additional task orders before they knew that it was functional in VISN, in that VISN. I know that, I assume that there was a desire to get this RTLS up and running across the enterprise, but with this unproven technology, we really believe that they should have been taking a more incremental approach.
It's just gasoline on the fire. I mean, we would all be upset if they lost $7.5 million, right? But before figuring out whether this would work, before figuring out whether the doctors and the IT people were speaking the same language, we went and deployed the same thing over and over again, even though it was behind schedule. That's what happened, right? So, a little bit of a loss what to do now. I mean, we're going to be under the gun on the budgets. The Congress is talking about spending $1 trillion a year in deficits in good times, and we can't have this kind of money wasted. We got nothing for this, and I know we're still paying for this, right? Is that right, Mr. Dahl?
Yes, as Mr. Bowman noted, we did recently get an action plan from VHA and OINT, a response to our recommendations. They're portraying to us that they're making that they have gone to a more incremental approach and they are making progress. Of course, we haven't done any follow-up on that yet to validate or verify that.
We probably can't blackball this contractor either, I don't suppose, can we? Because of the process concerns about that, right?
I would have to defer to probably the Office of Acquisition and Logistics on that, whether there's grounds for that.
Well, $500 million, $420 million, or whatever it is. I guess I think we're being taken advantage of. I think taxpayers are being taken advantage of. I'm a big fan of the VA. I would not describe the VA as a failure. I think it gets overstated sometimes, but this is really outrageous. And I just like the fact that I've heard this same song about the doctors not being able to speak the same language as the IT people. One, I've heard that in other contexts. That's a management issue. That's a cultural issue that you've recognized. You got to get a hold of. You can't do this again. And the fact that we spent $7 million to figure out if it worked, and no one could wait to figure out if it was working. You know, it's just shameful to spend that kind of money, and especially when we all know it's novel. So please don't come back to me again with this kind of stuff. And as to the Accountability Act, I would say, you know, this is exactly what this is meant for. Not for cooks and gardeners. It's outrageous that my vote was taken advantage of in that way, because it's the middle management that's the problem in the VA. To the extent there's a problem in the VA and it's not being dealt with, I yield back.